case there's someone in here that doesn't know me, I'm Frank Luciandro, a friend of Steve's, and he's asked me to do an introduction. Judy and I have lived in Mac for...
Could you use the speaker?
The microphone?
That's the mic for them.
Yeah, here's one.
You can't hear me?
Well, I can hear you, but I don't know if everybody can.
How about people in the back? Can they hear me?
What?
Not funny, Fred.
Here's a mic if you want.
And there's a mic stand for it if you want to not have to worry about it.
I think I could stand by myself.
There you go.
Anyway, where was I? Yeah, Judy and I have lived in Mac since 2002, and we've been friends with Steve and Kathy since 2008. When Steve asked me to introduce him for this event, I accepted immediately, but I thought, he didn't need an intro. Through his community and cultural activities, half the population of Mac must know him already. At least know who he is. But once I started making a list of what he's done and what he does, I was surprised by what I didn't know about him. And maybe he'll tell you. First, I want to talk about the books. They're up here. And so the first book he published was called There's a Somebody, which was published in 2013. Wonderful book. I think they're all wonderful, so I won't say wonderful again. Second book was All Hat, which was great. The third was an anthology called Prism, which was published with other writers here in town.
Yeah.
And now there's A Death in Felicity, which was published this year, of course. And I've had the opportunity to read it. I enjoyed it from page one. It was like Steve, a generous book, and it wonderfully describes the characters and the situation, and it all takes place on the Oregon coast. So we know some of the places that he's talking about. So I want to just tell you some of the volunteering he's done in this town for us. He was the editor of the AAYC, Art Alliance of Gamble County, newsletter from 2008 to 2010. He volunteered at the Sue Buell Elementary School in the SMART program. He was part of the McMinnville Short Film Festival. He's on the McMinnville Community Media Board. These guys are thick here. And he is the church, he's on the church council at the McMinnville Cooperative Ministries, which is where we are. And he's a founding member of Terroir Creative Writing Fiction in 2010, and he is still a member of that organization. Paper Gardens. Anyway, Paper Gardens. His writing was first selected for Paper Gardens in 2007. He tells an interesting story about first being selected to Paper Gardens, but it'll take me 20 minutes to tell the whole story, so I'll just skip it for now. Anyway, he was first submitted, he was admitted to the Paper Gardens book, and then this year, along with his granddaughter, Katie, together, they had 4 entries selected out of 400 submissions. Round of applause. He's been the host and interviewer of The Writing Life, which you can tune in and see on your TV. So when he first started in 2016, he thought there'd be 3 or 4 or 5 writers from the community that he'd interview, and then there wouldn't be any more. Well, not good at making predictions. So far, he's interviewed more than 100 writers during 108 TV shows. In 2023, possibly because he thought he didn't have enough to do, Steve decided to walk the Camino de Santiago. He started from France, northern France, and he walked all through the top of northern Spain with one and then two of them, one of his brothers. It took 7 weeks to walk 680 miles, which comes out to about 14 miles a day on the average. Anyway, that's some of the things that we can be thankful for Steve's presence in our community. And also, of course, his writing is, I'm not going to say wonderful again, but...
Oh, go ahead.
You've never said anything about my writing as being wonderful.
I said stupendous.
Because it's not. But at any rate, I'm going to get out of the way, and here's Stephen W. Long.
I guess you can hear me. I think this is on. Thank you, Frank. I wanted to say Frank is an author himself of several books, a lifelong filmmaker, still photographer, and good companion. Appreciate that. I also, Carrie Martin is here, and I wanted to point her out because she actually put together a couple of books, but this one particularly. And I so appreciate her doing that. And I have a website because of her. And thank all of you. When I first thought about doing this, I was really hoping for a pretty day. You know, the sun came out and everything, and that's what we got. But I was reminded that this is the kind of day that people go to the beach. So I'm not sure well, it worked out. So thank you for that. You know, when I was 18, you want me here? All right. When I was 18, I didn't think a lot about my future. But I went to Cal Poly Pomona, and they had a requirement that students declare a major. And I picked English because to the extent that I wanted to do anything, I wanted to be a writer. And so I was an English major and kind of worked through the years at the school. And then I got near graduation, and I found they had another requirement to do a senior project. And my advisor wanted me to write a paper about a dead person, being Walt Whitman or Sylvia Plath or somebody. And I just had no interest in that. I wanted to write an original story, and so I did. And the topic of the story, or the thrust of it, was the consequences of overconsumption, and which led to overproduction and kind of messed up the world, which was not a bad thing to write about. It could have been. The problem was the writing was awful. It was embarrassingly bad, and you know, having done that, I felt like maybe a kid who dreams of playing in the NBA, and then one day realizes, oh, I'm 5'6", you know. This isn't going to work. Whatever I needed to have, I didn't have. And so, you know, what do? You go on with life. And I had married my first wife by that time, which is working out. And I became a dock worker, and then I got a CDL. I was a big rig driver. And at the same time, my brothers and I and other friends were dirt bike riders. And in Southern California, the place you ride is the desert. My brother Rob and I were out there one day, and miles from camp, all alone, and his motorcycle through the drive chain. And you can kind of visualize there's a little sprocket at the motor and a big sprocket on the rear wheel, and the chain is flying around. Well, if it comes apart, it's like a mace. You know, it's heavy, and you know, bad things can happen. And in fact, it did. It came around and smashed his engine case, and you know, which is inconvenient. And we eventually got the bike back to camp, and then got it home. And then Rob and I and our dad, you know, as you would see in like a Norman Rockwell or something, well, there must be a better way. And we kind of sat down and started to design really a fail-safe retaining clip for the master link of a chain, which is the part that failed. And we called this thing a link lock. We applied for a patent, got the patent, and then I thought, well, now what? Well, start a business. And we did, and we called the business Long Run Products. And why did we call it Long Run? It's run by the Longs, so that it became Long Run Products. And we bought an old punch press, and we started to make these things, and I went out to sell them. And we sold, it wasn't a failure. On the other hand, we made about 30 cents each, and you got to sell a bunch of them to pay the rent. And it was obvious pretty quickly that we needed to do something else. So at the time, my brother was 19, Rob, and he was the youngest certified welder in California. And I thought, well, I own a clean shirt, I'll go out and find us some welding work. It was a pretty good plan, not a great plan. The wrinkle was we didn't have a welding machine. And I know what you're thinking. If you're going to start a welding business, you don't need one welding machine, you need at least three, right? A MIG, a TIG, and a stick electrode. But you're right. So fortunately, we knew an institution that had those things, which was the high school. And we went to where we had gone to school, talked to the metal shop teacher, and convinced him to let us into the school at night. So I went out and, I got some work and I brought it back, and Rob did that, and I delivered it the next day. And this went on for a while until we could buy some equipment of our own, and we did. And really over the next several years, we did some pretty high-profile work. And maybe the thing I'm most proud of is we built the top of the debarking platform for the space shuttle. So when the astronauts come home and step out of the craft, they step onto the thing that we made, which is kind of cool. And we made a couple of tank mock-ups for the Army. We built a lot of the trainer for the Navy's phalanx anti-aircraft weapon. Where's Jim? I was thinking about, raise your hand. I know you're here. Oh, there, you're just in front of me. We also repaired I think they're called bogies, for the train cars that were so old that there's no parts available, so we worked on that. If I didn't mention, we made a lot of cargo containers for the Flying Tiger Airlines. So in this period, I remember I got a call one day, and the fella said, do you have trailers for the Honda ATC, which was a newish thing at that time. And if you remember, it was a three-wheeled vehicle with the big balloon tires. And I said, oh, I don't have one, but I can make you one. And he just hung up on me. And I think that was a Thursday. And then the next day, Friday, a guy called up and he said, do you have a trailer for the Honda ATCs? And I said, well, we're a fabrication shop. I can sure make you one. And he hung up. So then there was the weekend, I think Monday or Tuesday, we got a call, and the guy said, do you have trailers for the ATCs? And I said, you bet we do. And that was the beginning of Long Run Trailers. And we became synonymous, that is, Long Run Trailers became synonymous with the power sports industry throughout California, Arizona, and Nevada. And we sort of pioneered that market. At some point, and we had a dealer network, and at some point, one of the dealers called me and he said, would you make me a trailer for the Kawasaki jet ski? And we knew what that was, but I kind of didn't want to do it because you have to back it into the water. And so the lights have to be a sealed light or something so that they don't short out the electrical. And the axle has to be sealed so you don't get water in the bearings. And I didn't want to do it, but he's a good dealer, and I thought, well, I'll make this uncomfortable, and he'll just tell me, no, let's not do that. And I said, well, we don't have the tooling to do that, to justify it. I'd need a big order. And he said, what's a big order? And there's a couple of ways to calculate that. One is to estimate the design time, put in the materials, find a number to divide that by that gets the unit price low enough that somebody will buy the thing. That's not what I did. The other method is to pick a number out of the air. And so I said 10. And thinking that that's a lot, and he'll say no thanks, and we'll move on. But he said, yeah, okay, you've got an order for 10. So now we have to make these things. And thank goodness we did, because over the next many years, we made thousands of those. And to the point that we were exporting jet ski trailers to Japan, which I thought was ironic since they come from Japan. But in any event, that worked out. And all of that business stuff is to say a lot of time passed between the disastrous senior project and at the end of this period. We have 2 daughters, and for folks who have children, you know, there comes a point, it only lasts 2 or 3 years, but where children don't have parents. And that happened to us. And so we'd have to drop them off a block from the dance or the party or something because their friends don't have parents either. And that would be embarrassing to be the only one with parents. But what it did was it freed Kathy and me up to do other things. And she pursued painting. She's really a terrific painter. And this will sound disingenuous, but it's the truth. About that time, I thought, well, you know, actors take acting lessons and singers take singing lessons. I wonder if I could take a class and learn how to write. So I looked around, and in fact, our local JC had a night class, and I signed up, and it turned out to be ideal for me. The teacher was Dana Brookins, and she was an Edgar Award winner for her YA novel, Alone in Wolf Hollow. And so, she knew how to write, but maybe more than that, she was gentle. And that's really what I needed. I was the oldest, I was uncomfortable. I thought, you know, all these kids are so smart and I'm gonna look like an old grandpa or something. So she wouldn't allow, you could critique, but you couldn't criticize. So that was good for me. And then along the way, I think about halfway through the year, there was a literary event. It was gonna be a weekend. And there was a speaker, and part of this thing was a writing contest, which I entered and I won. And the speaker, the guest, was Ray Bradbury. And I was picked to, he doesn't drive, so I was picked to escort him around and show him, you know, where to go and everything. And I wanted to believe that I got that honor because I won the contest, when in fact, even then I figured I got to do that because I was older and I didn't have purple hair. In fact, I had almost no hair at all. So, but that was a cool thing, and it was a great weekend. And then, so that was kind of in the winter. And in the spring, near the end of the school year, I learned about another contest. So the first one was at Chaffey College. The second was at Mount San Antonio. And I wanted to enter that. But I was outside the zip code. And, but I knew a friend who lived close, and I used his address as the return address. So I entered that, and I won. And it's not an exaggeration to say it changed my life, because on that weekend I went, and there was I want to say menu, but what is it, a schedule or something? Various speakers. And one of the topics was something like how to structure a novel. And I felt like I could kind of do shorter work, but I was really struggling, as you know, evidenced by my senior project, was struggling with longer work. So I said, well, that's the class for me, and I went to that, and it turned out that it was taught by Elizabeth George. who I didn't know from him. I didn't know where she lived. I didn't know anything about her. But I listened to her talk, and I thought, wow, this is just what I need. And I left that, and I went out, and there was a broad sidewalk and with tables set up, and they were selling books. And I found her book, one of the books, and bought it, both to read, but also because I wanted to contact her. And, excuse me. And I wrote to her, but in care of her publisher, because I didn't know how to get to her. And what I said was, I attended this class, and it was terrific. And if you are in Southern California, and if you ever teach, I'd really like to take your class. And so again, this was in the spring. Before the start of the next school year, I got a letter from her, and it said, I am going to teach at Orange Coast Community College. And I signed up for that. And again, it was really a great class. And I went to 2 semesters. And then that was done. Sometime after that, a fellow who had been in the class contacted me and said, did you know that Elizabeth teaches an exclusive class in her home? And she only takes 6 people, and there's 6 in there now. But I know that somebody in the class is moving, and I think you should apply. And I did. And there's a kind of an audition thing, and I did that, and I got in. And I was with Elizabeth for kind of the next 10 years. Just before we were going to move up here, and she was leaving Southern California to go to Washington, she contacted me and said, did you know about my foundation? Which I didn't. And so I learned about that, and she said that I was nominated for a grant from the foundation, and all I had to do was accept it. So, okay. And I did that, and the grant was for a year, and it sustained us, and I was really diligent. I really wanted to do this. And so quarterly, I had to turn in my work, and they would, make suggestions and so on. And after a year, I had a book, or I thought I did. And so I turned that in, and I guess it's the board looked at it and made more suggestions. And then Elizabeth said, how long would it take you to implement these suggestions? And never having done it before, I said, 3 months. And she said, okay, we're going to extend your grant for 3 months. And so then I did that. And at the end of that time, I had a manuscript, I had a book that, they said it was okay, so I said it was okay. And I started to send it out and looking for representation. I was trying to get an agent. And this is not atypical, but I had 100 rejections. And at about 104, I think, I had been following an agent online, and she posted, I normally don't look for this sort of thing, but now I want a male confessional. I don't even know what that is. But she gave an example of it, or a description, but the example was Nick Hornby's High Fidelity. And so I wrote her back and I said, I have what you asked for. And a couple of days later, I got a canned rejection that said, thank you, but it's not a good fit. Or, well, how do you know it's not a good fit? You asked for the thing, and I said, I've got this. At least look at it and then say it's no good. So after all these rejections, it wouldn't be illogical to assume that the writing was bad. Except that, again, how do you know it's bad if you don't look at it? And it was discouraging. But she had mentioned High Fidelity. I went out and got the book. I read it, and I thought, this is what's wrong with mine. I kind of, in a way, didn't like my own work. And in hindsight, I think it was because I was trying to write like Elizabeth, and it's just that's not me, and I can't do it. So I read High Fidelity, which is told in first-person present tense, and I thought, that's the ticket. That's what I need to do to make this the guy, so the protagonist is a kind of a knucklehead, and makes decisions that I hope we probably wouldn't make. But I thought if the reader could see the world through his eyes, maybe this would make more sense. So on my own dime or on my own time, I rewrote the whole book, and now I liked it. And I found a publisher, and it's called Hybrid Publishing, but they do the promotion, and I paid for the printing, and so that's the book. And the most impactful, how can I say this? The most impactful compliment, I'm going to call it a compliment, that I got was on that book, which I called There's a Somebody. And that was, I went to work one day, and it was early, and I parked, and a coworker was in the office and came out, and he saw me and sort of stomped across the parking lot. And I mean, he had a scowl, and I thought he was going to punch me. And he got in my face, and he said, I have never hated a protagonist like I hate your guy. And I thought, well, that's the coolest thing ever. Because he had a visceral reaction as if this was a real person. And I thought, I kind of did my job. It had that sort of an impact. And from then on, I thought I had something. And I was pleased with the book, and then again, you move on with your life. I had no particular plans for a second book, except I was on a business trip. I was driving along, and the Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson song came on, Mamas, Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. And there's a line in that says, cowboys like smoky old pool rooms and clear mountain mornings, little warm puppies and children, and girls of the night. And I thought, yeah, I like puppies. But what I really thought was, that's not cowboys, that's everybody. Because we all have contradictory thoughts and actions and so on. So that's one thing. The other thing was, I was such a big fan of Lonesome Dove. And, to the extent that I could, I wanted to do something like that. So I set the venue for the novel on a cattle ranch, which is pretty good, except I know nothing about cows. So I found a large animal vet, and by that I mean it was a vet that took care of large animals, not that he was, And I went and interviewed him several times, and then at some point he gave me some muck boots, and he says, we've talked enough, you need to get out and do something. So we went out, and this again, Southern California, it was Chino, which is kind of dairy country, and he takes care of all the dairy cattle. And I went down there, and he was off doing something, and he had me giving shots to the calves, and they stick their head through the restraint, they're feeding, and I reached over, and there's a kind of a triangle that you aim for, and I was giving cows a shot. And at one point, I gave a calf a shot, and it jumped and rattled everything, and he looked down at me, and he said, are you okay? And I said, I'm okay, but I was afraid I was going to break the needle off in his neck. And the doc said, oh, I got more needles. And truly, at that time, I thought, this is a commodity. They could be rolls of carpet. It's just a thing to make money. Not that they're cruel, but anyway, so there's a lot of stuff in the book that is zoologically accurate because of this guy. And I was pleased with that book and so on. So anyway, that's 2 books. And moved on, and I had no intention, I wasn't against writing another book, I just had no ideas. And, but I, probably like you guys, my nightstand is just piled with books that I'm trying to get to. But I found myself gravitating toward the Robert B. Parker books, which are, he's done a couple of series, Spencer and Jesse Stone, and he did another, Sonny Randall, which I've not read, but I read the others. And they're just, you know, I read at night, and I'm tired, and I'm not looking for something like really intellectual or heavy, and these are, as I've told my group, this is not Shakespeare. But but I really liked them, and I thought, well, I'm going to write a scene. Now, I'm not going to write a book. I'm just going to write a scene. And I wrote the scene, and I thought, well, that's kind of fun. And then, well, I'll write another scene. And I did that, and then I started taking. There's my. I think Susan's over here someplace, and they liked it, and I liked it. So it was encouraging, and I kept going on that, and gosh, after a while I had a book, and so and I'm very flattered, or that's the wrong word. I'm gratified that it's been well received and by people who like that kind of thing. So in fact, I was going to read something. I've had the opportunity, the good fortune, to go to the Squaw Valley Writers Conference a couple of times. And I got to talk to Richard Ford right after he won the Pulitzer for Independence Day. And he was at a bar, and such a goof. I walked up and hi, Mr. Ford. And, I don't want anything. I just wanted to see you. And he said, no, come have a drink with me. So I had a drink with him, and he said, well, tell me about your writing. And I did that. I met Anne Lamott. That was cool. Gil Dennis, the screenwriter, talked to him. James Fry, not the Million Little Pieces James Fry, but How to Write a Damn Good Novel James Fry. But maybe the thing that impacted me the most was John Lesquois. And if you've not heard his name and only read it, it looks like John Lescoart, but it's John Lesquois. And what he said was, put your character on the page and have him do something. So that's what I've been trying to do. And this is the first chapter of Death and Felicity. Sunday morning. Saturday morning. It's daylight savings time. Saturday morning, early. The only sound in Moss's trailer, waves collapsing against the shore below the bluff, and the occasional screech of a gull. He opened an eye and smiled at the thought of the day ahead, a day of sun and fishing, an easy weekend away from an easy job. He lay several minutes more until he finally pulled himself upright and swung his feet to the gritty floor. Moss swiped each foot once across the towel before stepping into his weekend uniform, flip-flops, a cut-off sweatshirt. He measured coffee into the pot's steel basket, then added a scoop for luck. He set the pot on a burner and lit the propane flame, sat at the table and opened a book. When the coffee smelled about right, he marked his page, poured a cup, added a drop of cream from the ice chest, and slipped on a nylon windbreaker. He started for the picnic table beside the trailer, but the night had been foggy and there was a sheen of moisture on the bench. Cup still in hand, he headed back inside to fetch a towel. By the time he returned to the table, Gil Martin was running down the path. Jesus, I'm glad you're here, Martin said, out of breath. He was dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, pale blue with white stripes, loafers without socks. Martin was a short man with a willowy build, though Moss figured the mustache added about a pound. Moss saluted with a cup, and good morning to you too. Not for me it isn't, not for you either. You aren't going to like this one bit. Already Moss didn't like it. The tide was coming in, best time to cast into the waves. 2 weeks ago, he'd landed a Dorado. Not that that species had any business this far north, but that was the ocean for you. You never knew what you're going to get. This can't wait until I get a first sip? What happened? A toilet overflow? Some kids set off fireworks? But Martin had gone pale under his tan, and Moss got the feeling this problem wasn't going to be solved with a plunger. In answer, Martin poked a thumb over his shoulder. Bottom of the cliff, he said, still breathing hard. Campers found her. Moss cocked his head. Dead girl, deader than hell. So, and anyway, I had this actually with a publisher, and they declined it because they said they really liked it, but it was noir, and their emphasis was historical. So, heck with them. I published. Anyway, guys, if you have a question, I'll try to answer it. If you want to buy a book, I know from experience my daughter will take your money. So, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.